I'm Gary Nickerson.
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
And this is Outside My Window. The YCon Gaming and Comics Convention happened recently, and the 3-day event at the Rod Grand Hotel in Yarmouth was billed as a space where enthusiasts of all genres of games, cosplay, and all things comics and otherwise can share and discuss news of what's going on in all of the fandoms around the world. Now, their inaugural event in 2019 was a success, and they certainly planned on building upon that success in 2020. But, like many other festivals and events, the rug got pulled out due to COVID, and then again in 2021. So, whilst this was really only the second time the YCon was being held, things were looking good in the pre-planning and pre-event ticket sales. Shortly after the doors were opened on the Friday night, Quinn chatted with Malcolm Seaboyer, current president of the executive committee, about how he was feeling now that things were fully underway.
I'm feeling really good. It's so exciting to see the entire community back out playing games, enjoying their passions here at the Rod Grand Hotel in Yarmouth for YCon 2022. It's been a long road to get here, months of planning, volunteer work, sponsors, we can't thank them enough, the local governments for their support, the province of Nova Scotia for their support, all of our volunteers, our executive committee. There's so many people that I want to thank, the vendors for coming out. It's been a long road and it's paid off already massively. It's exciting.
So over the course of the weekend, you got a variety of different things going on. What's going to be the showcase? Is it going to be the gaming more so than anything else?
I think that everything kind of has its own place. There's the cosplay panel that's on Saturday. Gaming tournaments throughout the weekend. Super Smash Bros. Is super popular and sold out 3 weeks or so before the event even kicked off. That tournament is going to be packed and full of good gaming. We've got so many board games. There is probably over 100 board games in the library that you can rent. And that's awesome. People, connecting, and that's the heart of the event. Connecting in person again, showing your passion, showing your love of geeky things, sci-fi, board gaming, whatever you name it, we've got a little bit of everything.
So Malcolm, other than the gaming, you've got some really cool panels coming up. Why don't you give us a little treat on that?
Sure. So we've got a lot of great panelists coming. We have mostly the panels happening on the Saturday and the Sunday of the event. We have Tim Doucette from the Deep Sky Eye Observatory. He's coming in to do a talk on astronomy and the great beyond in outer space. We have video game and board game development with Josh Robertson and Matthew Doucette, who are local board game and video game developers. We have authors Julian Smith and Tony Morris coming in to do a panel on the Saturday. Then we have some indie films on Saturday evening, which is kind of a panel. We're going to showcase some indie films from different creators. We have a wire tree making workshop with Garen Thibault and his wire tree making business, I guess you would call it. He's a vendor here this weekend too, and he's got some really great cool stuff. Very cool. DJ Atkins 902 is a Twitch streamer. He's going to do some Twitch tips and tricks on Saturday night on how to get into Twitch streaming, learn more about Twitch and how to start your channel. We have some virtual guest, virtual panel with Vancouver-based actor Reg Rosie is going to be virtually brought to Yarmouth on Saturday. Then for panels to wrap up on Sunday, we also have the Shag Harbor UFO Museum author. Chris Stiles is coming from, I guess he's a bit from the Shag Harbor UFO Museum. He's a UFO researcher himself, author, and he'll be here on Sunday to do a panel.
He's really cool too.
Yeah, he's awesome. It's going to be great.
So what puts the Y in YCon?
That's another great question. It's a little bit of everything. Yarmouth, the town of Yarmouth, Yarmouth County. It's a whole Southwest Nova Scotia event, and it's just held in Yarmouth. It supports beautiful Yarmouth and Acadian Shores, Nova Scotia. Brings people to the community. That's the why, I guess, in YCon is not just the town of Yarmouth, Yarmouth County, Southwest Nova Scotia. That's what I guess it would mean.
What have you put down for yourself to deem the weekend a success?
That is hard to measure. That is a good question, Quinn. Man, it is. I'd say it's already a success just in getting back into the event, seeing it happen again, seeing the people out, the vendors, the guests. It's already a success in my books. I'm pretty emotional about it because it means a lot to me. This event, the community, the gaming community, to put this on and give something special it means a lot.
How long are you going to let yourself rest before you start planning next year?
Oh man, we got to do some wrap up work, that's for sure. But I've already had ideas kicking around in the gears turning for 2023. Exciting times, and I can't wait to start planning. But we'll probably take the summer to rest and recoup, and we also could use potentially new hands on the volunteer board if anybody's interesting. We usually have our AGM in early September. Look for that on our Facebook page and website, and come on out and check it out if you want to be on the board of directors, potentially our planning committee. You can help out in a variety of ways. But I got to give a shout out to the volunteers and our executive committee for hauling this event together and putting the hours in, and it means so much to me because there's no I in team. It's a team effort that made this happen.
One of the panels featured local writer Tony Morris. He's the author of Beyond What Separates Us. It's a novel about four strangers from distant parts of the world who struggle to survive on a planet torn apart by war, greed, and disease. Living under drastically different circumstances, they are each presented with an opportunity to choose what type of world they want to live in.
Tony, one thing that I noticed about your book is it's a bit prophetic. I know you finished it in 2019, but some of the things about that occur in the book seem to be happening.
Yeah, it was a little unintentional at the time. But, given my background in the environmental field, scientists have kind of been predicting pandemics for the years. The more and more we kind of ignore the biodiversity crisis and destroy the planet, it's pretty self-explanatory that diseases will become more prevalent and more severe. So that one wasn't as much of a surprise. The other kind of prophetic thing that's happened recently is there's the book references a war in Eastern Europe that has since kind of dissipated, with Kyiv and actually Ukraine being the front of that war and a struggle between the East and West. And I never mentioned Russia by name, but essentially it's kind of implied. So again, it wasn't really intentional. It was never something I thought that would happen so soon after the book getting published. But I guess looking at history and looking at, Russia's kind of imperialistic attitude over the last 5-10 years, it wasn't really that surprising, but still scary nonetheless.
Are there any other surprises in your book that you might see happen?
It talks about coastal areas that are since been flooded, and which is not that far-fetched. The predictions for sea level rise and hundreds of millions of people that live in areas that are vulnerable to sea level rise. It talks about there's one of the characters ends up kind of on a ship doing coral reef restoration and things like that. I love scuba diving myself, and knowing the threats that coral reefs around the world face, and that we might in 30-40 years lose them altogether. And they're the nurseries for basically so much life in the ocean that it will have global ramifications. So, and we are seeing it. The Great Barrier Reef has had a couple bad years where more than half of it has been bleached, and that's the largest system in the world. So, it's none of the things that are talked about are in the realm of science fiction. They're things that scientists are predicting, things that we are witnessing currently. So,
So where do you think the action needs to start? I mean, as an individual, I recycle, I do my part. I'm thinking about putting solar power into my house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm only one person out of 6-7 billion. Where do we really need to see the action happen in order for us to be able to stabilize? I'm not going to say reverse because that's really ambitious, but to stabilize things.
It's a tough question, and it's one I struggle with, like as an individual as well, who works in this field and is really passionate about politics, in the sense that we still very much politically seem to be just maintaining the status quo. So I think, it can feel a little bit hopeless as an individual that really what difference can I make? But there are lots of individuals out there, and so you build those coalitions, you build those allies, you push for the political change, you push corporations to do better. It is an uphill battle. Like myself, I do everything I can. Like I walk everywhere. I'm vegan, so I don't eat. I plant-based diet. Recycling is basically the bare minimum at this point. But try to reduce the amount of waste I produce in general. So I buy products that don't have waste. But there are more and more people every day that are waking up to kind of the challenges we face. And, it does require major system change. And yes, we need a huge shift in our politics. And we need capitalism needs basically a rebrand. That's not just about greenwashing. That's actually the environment is necessary for growth. So, I don't have any answers other than just I need to be hopeful myself. But things may need to get worse before they get better.
Are you planning a follow-up? Next predictions?
I have ideas for a prequel and a sequel, but again, it's something that when you work full time and being an author is your kind of side hustle, it's hard to get motivated to do it. So, but yeah, no, I don't necessarily want to predict the future too much. So.
In order to capture the heart of what the YCon event really is, we got some help. Sean MacLellan offered to give us a hand to speak the geek on the floor of the con. Sean.
Thanks, Gary. We're going to wander around here and chat with a few people over the next little while.
My name's Paul Beck, and I'm retired.
And what is it you're doing at YCon this year?
This year I'm selling comic books, action figures, comic book related merchandise.
I notice you have a lot of older comic books here, especially a lot of Silver Age stuff. Do you find that goes well at conventions, or do you just bring whatever?
I bring what I can. I try to offer a wide variety. It depends upon the collectors, whether or not they're into Silver Age. Some people are, some people aren't. I find nowadays a lot of the younger collectors prefer modern age Batman as opposed to the Silver Age.
Did you get involved in this through a store, or were you just a long-time collector that decided to start selling things off?
I'm a long-time collector. I'm retired. I decided now's the time to sell it off, pass it off to the next generation who wants it.
And how do you price things? Are you an expert grader yourself?
I consider myself an expert grader. I worked in a comic book store for 10 years. Part of my job was to grade comic books for listing on eBay. So I consider myself a competent grader, and I price them either according to the Overstreet Price Guide, which is a guide, or according to eBay, what is hot at the moment and is selling.
Yeah, I know I've tried to explain to a few people that just because a book says that it's worth $200 doesn't mean it's going to sell for that. Is that what you find over the years?
Yes, exactly, because sometimes if you look in the Overstreet Price Guide, you find an average bin comic that says it's worth $3 or $4 US. It's not unusual to find it in a dollar bin in Canada.
Is this your first time in Yarmouth, or have you been here before?
We visited Yarmouth once before, but this is the first time for us at the YCon.
How's it been going so far this weekend?
It's been going pretty well. It's not bad. We've met some very nice people, and it's always gratifying to sell something to someone who's been looking for that item for a long time. It's very gratifying to see that, to actually provide that for someone.
If somebody can't make it this weekend and they still want to take a look at your stuff and maybe buy a few things, how can they do that?
I have various comic books listed on Kijiji. If they look on Kijiji, for example, Johnny Quest, I have a 1960s Johnny Quest one-shot comic book. As far as I know, it's the only one listed on Kijiji in Nova Scotia.
My name is Lacey. I make a webcomic called Lies Within at lieswithincomic.com. It's about a secret world of monsters and demons in Toronto, and the guy who happens to fall in on the secret and all the drama that happens around that.
Now, how did you find out about coming down to YCon?
So I recently moved back to Nova Scotia. I'm originally from here. I moved to the Valley, and I was looking around for little trade shows or anything I could do, and YCon popped up. And I was like, I didn't know there was a convention in Yarmouth. I knew about HellCon, but I didn't know about YCon, so I applied. They got right back to me, and then now I'm here.
The comic that you have, I know it's an online web comic. How do you go about finding that? And I see that you've actually got some books here. Is it in print, or are these just special?
These are just special. I did just a small run for a con. These are side stories. They're not the webcomic itself. The webcomic is on lieswithincomic.com. It's published by Hiveworks at hiveworkscomics.com, and we have a ton of different types of comics on Hiveworks, all at the hub. But yeah, mine's just on this website here, so anyone who wants to find me can find me on the website. Or they could also follow me at ByeLacey, BYELACEY, on Twitter and Instagram.
How did you get into doing comics?
I was really interested in webcomics for a long time, like early 2000s, Penny Arcade, like questionable content, those like older webcomics. I was like, I really want to do one of those. And for years, I was like, I really want to do one of those. But it took me until 2017 to actually sit down and do one of those.
And you do the whole thing yourself, the writing and the art?
Yes, yeah.
Who are your influences?
Gosh, supernatural drama from the early 2010s. Like everything, like the showcase shows, like Being Human, Supernatural, all those like dramas that are like melodramatic with weird effects. I was like, I want to make that into a comic, so I did.
Nick Doucette. I'm going to be participating in the Pokemon tournament and cosplay competition.
I know, and a lot of people that recognize your name know that you've been heavily involved in Pokemon and Pokemon Go and all this other stuff. How did you get involved in it? Were you just a kid and started getting into it and kept going, or what?
Yeah, it just worked out age-wise back when the Pokemon boom was a fact. I was a kid and got on with it. So I followed Pokemon all those years and kept at it, and it's great to kind of see an event like that happening here at YCon.
For the cosplay, last time YCon was on, you actually went as Aladdin. Do you make every single piece of your cosplay costume?
No, I have a very great aunt who's the seamstress, and she helps me with the seamstress parts of the costume, right? I help get all the materials, I help get making sure it looks correctly and everything like that. And there's other things for this cosplay that I'm going to be this afternoon, which had a lot of electronics involved. So that's more my expertise compared to the seamstress bit. So this one here was a combination of the two, and it worked out good.
And you're a different Loki.
I'm Kid Loki.
And what's your name?
Kalita.
And what convinced you to dress up as Loki to come to this?
My mom over there dressed as Sylvie. So she said she was going to come as Sylvie. So I asked her if she could make me a Kid Loki outfit, and she said sure.
So were you a big fan of the show before this, or just getting into it now?
I really like the show. My mom's watched it like 4 or 5 times now.
And which one is your favorite in the show?
Kid Loki and probably normal Loki.
And your name is?
Kayla.
And you're the mom that came up with the idea of the Loki stuff?
I am.
Now, how did you get into this? Were you into the comics before, or the movies, or?
I've been a huge fan right since the first Thor movie.
You weren't into the comics before that?
A little bit here and there, but not big.
What did the whole idea of so many different types of Lokis, the whole multiverse, what did that do for your ideas for costumes?
Well, it really opened up the ability to do a family cosplay where I get my kid Loki and then I get to be Sylvie and then, well, she was wearing a crocodile with a crown on her head, so she was croaky for a bit, so.
And you guys all came as a team together,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
except for Dad.
Except for him, yeah.
Have you been in for any of the judging yet?
Not yet, no.
So, did you create the comics, the costumes yourself, or did you buy stuff?
I did my entire costume, and I did the sewing on hers, and then I let her do all the detail work.
Can I get your name and the name of your group?
I'm Imad Aziz, and I'm with Games on Board.
Games on Board, if I understand correctly, has a very special background to it. How did you get started?
It started with the Syrian refugees back in 2015. I hosted an event at a potluck to welcome them, and I brought board games to keep the kids entertained. And it turns out that even the youth and adults enjoyed it, and it brought people together. And so that's how the idea sparked, was a way of bringing people together through board games. And then it evolved into things like helping people with mental health, people who would need that bit of push or encouragement. And so the board games became a tool for us to make a difference, and that's what Games on Board is about.
When I first heard about you and your organization, at first I was kind of questioning it, and then I thought, well, yeah, we all relax when we're playing it. Is that something you find, is that people go away from whatever it is that's normally bothering them or whatever and just get into the game?
And that's the intent, yes. We try to facilitate in a way that will help bring people together and help them overcome something that they are either struggling with or afraid of or never tried before. And so part of that experience is here today at YCon is to get people to try new things. There's a lot of hesitancy. Well, I don't know about this. This looks complicated. I'm not a gamer. All sorts of reasons why people would not want to come to the table. But with positive energy, and if they give it a try, we help them succeed and overcome. So there was an event yesterday where a mom and her son tried this game here, Super Fantasy Brawl. Mom made the declaration, she's not a gamer, she doesn't know anything, what's going on, I don't understand the cards. But she swept 5-0, and she was so ecstatic, she jumped up, and it made her day. And that's the kind of moments and experience we're trying to bring today.
You said about starting it with refugees. Do you find that a lot of these board games, that it doesn't matter what language you speak, what your background is, it's just a game to get into?
It is, and the beauty of board games is there's such a big universe. There's always something out there for someone. The joy is in the discovery of finding what works for me. And so from Games on Board, we've always made I'll say an unofficial motto is to try it. If you don't like it, we can try something else. You got nothing to lose, but during the journey, you'll make friends, you'll make memories, and then you'll have a better understanding of who you are as a person and how we can work together as a community.
Do you find that no matter where somebody's from in the world, that they're going to get competitive in one of these games?
Yes, and we like to encourage positive competitiveness, so teamwork is a big thing. And so whenever we go to a new place, there's always a level of, we want games that makes people work together. And so the very first game that we did at the event, before there was ever Games on Board formally, was the game called Cosmic Encounter. It's a game about shifting alliances, but you have to work together to win, and it was a very good social experiment to see how people will react to changing conditions, and obviously there's this competitiveness, but people understood that I have to work with someone who is different, who thinks differently, who acts differently, who may have different personalities. But at the end of the day, we have to work together to win. And at the end of the day, that's our philosophy, is people walk away from the table with a good experience, that they share something with others on the table.
So this is not like Risk and Battleship where you're trying to slam the other one.
No, we do have those games too, but for the most part, the idea is to bring people together in games that can help them understand with each strengths and work together. One of the most popular games that we have is called The Others, where one player, usually me, plays as the bad guy, and everybody else is on a good team trying to work together, and I make life difficult for them. And they're supposed to overcome those problems and challenges. So how do we do things? Who moves where? And you get this and I'll go here, that kind of thing. So strategizing that, it really brings out the spirit of camaraderie, and that's a beautiful thing.
On the night of October 4th, 1967, at about 11:20 p.m. Atlantic Daylight Time, it was reported that something had crashed into the waters off Shag Harbor. At least 11 people saw a low-flying, lit object head towards the harbor. Multiple witnesses reported hearing a whistling sound, like a bomb, and then a whoosh, and finally, a loud bang. The object was never officially identified and was therefore referred to as an unidentified flying object, UFO, in Government of Canada documents. Move ahead to 2019. The Royal Canadian Mint issued a limited edition glow-in-the-dark UFO XPO silver coin. The Shag Harbor UFO XPO is an annual event that brings UFO experts and witnesses together to share their observations and the latest theories and research about unidentified flying objects. This year, during the weekend of October 1st and 2nd, there will be 4 U.S. celebrity UFO researchers. They'll be presenting in Atlantic Canada for the very first time. Also presenting will be best-selling author and podcaster Ryan Sprague and Shag Harbor investigator Chris Stiles. We spoke with Danny Reed at their booth at YCon about the up-and-coming event.
Yeah, hi, my name's Danny Reed. I'm from Yarmouth. I'm here at the YCon event to promote the UFO Expo for the Shag Harbor Incident Society that we have coming up this October 1st and 2nd. The event is a 2-day event, as I just mentioned. The first day is going to be a conference here at the Grand Hotel. We have 6 world-renowned UFOologists coming to speak at the event. 5 are out of the U.S. They're pretty high-profile speakers. Many of them have been on CNN, Fox News, etc. So we have those folks lined up for Saturday speaking. We do have a Q&A session Saturday evening where folks attending can sit, meet the individuals, ask them questions, talk to them. Then on Sunday, if you buy a ticket for that event, it's going to be a bus tour where we're going to bus people on a chartered bus from Yarmouth down to the actual crash site in Shag Harbor. We're going to have a couple witnesses on the bus that you can talk to, meet them, ask them how that event played out, pick their brain basically about what the event, what happened, what transpired that evening. And Chris Stiles from Halifax, who's done a lot of research, written a couple books on the event, he'll be on the bus basically narrating how that whole evening played out and available for Q&A as well. Ideally, what we want to do is we want to grow this to a larger event to be held here in Yarmouth every fall, which is the anniversary of when the event happened back in 1967. And we think there's a lot of folks interested in that kind of UFO phenomenon, the whole, I guess, you know, everything around UFOs and so on. And we'd like to see it grow to be a larger event, attract a lot of people to the area, and make it something that people would look forward to and, yeah, make it kind of fun and exciting.
So this happened like 50 years ago,
50
but
some, yeah.
but it's still front of mind for a lot of people. What do you think attributes to that being?
That is a good question. So maybe, that's a great question. I'll say this, I was telling my mother-in-law about it the other day, and we're talking about it. She's a bit into it. So she said, did they ever prove it was an alien craft that crashed? And I said, no, but they also didn't prove that it wasn't. So I think the mystery and what got me fascinated and interested in it is they really truly don't know what crashed in the harbor back in October of 1967. There's 30 some odd witnesses. A couple were RCMP officers, some Department of Natural Resource folks, many, you know, reputable people that witnessed this craft go into the harbor, float on the water for a period of time, and then sink. Many thought it was an aircraft, but nothing was ever recovered. Nothing ever came of it as far as evidence or proof of what happened. So the mystery is still there. For Chris Stiles, the guy who's done the research, he says the more you look into it, the more the mystery actually becomes more of a mystery. It's the only official government documented UFO crash in the world. So UFO doesn't mean alien spacecraft, but it's a government documented proof that something in fact did enter the water. No one's ever come forward to say what it was. So is it U.S. secret high-tech aircraft? This is 1967 again, right? So it's not the space shuttle. So yeah, so what was it? The other thing I think that's neat is lately, if you follow CNN with the little tic-tac crafts and all this and that, there's a lot in the media right now about the government's coming forward and saying, yes, there are different crafts that are being spotted by military folks, by airline pilots, by average people. The stigma around seeing UFOs is changing a bit. I myself don't know if I believe in it, but I'm absolutely fascinated by it, very curious about it, and have always been all my life. I was 13 when Star Wars came out, and I got hooked on stuff then, and I never walk outside and not look up. So your question as to why this is still in the news, I think it fascinates a ton of people. I think people are very curious about it, and it's never been more front and center than it is actually right now. And it all goes back to this kind of an event. Again, similar things happen in Roswell, New Mexico. There's Falcon Lake. And what is it with all these different sightings and events? Nobody knows. So everybody loves a mystery.
A fantasy and gaming convention wouldn't be complete without miniatures. Painting miniatures has been a part of the gaming culture right from the beginning. Whilst the medium has changed, the enthusiasm of the artist has certainly not.
I'm Kristen Fowler, and I'm one of the people that entered into the painting competition for miniatures.
So, Kirsten, today's miniatures, what are they made of? I mean, when I did miniatures back in the 80s, they were pewter, but that's not the way things are today.
Yeah, well, we're glad we got away from lead because lead was always a very popular medium. Now we see the majority of them tend to be plastic because it's cheaply produced. But the level of detail you're getting out of plastic minis now is absolutely fantastic. And then one step above that are the resin miniatures. And resin is just the top of the line, and the detail is fantastic. And with the rise and affordability of 3D printers, we're seeing even more resin come to life, and it's great to see because it's affordable.
So when you're painting, I mean, again, I can only draw back on my experience. So, I was using oil-based paints. I was using a lot of acrylic paints. But is there a more popular medium one way or the other now?
Well, the old guard still exists, and the old guard still very much prefers oil paints. But in my short career of miniature painting, so about 3 years, water-based. Water-based paints are the big thing. Again, they're cheap, they're non-toxic, and the quality you get from them is second to none. I know a lot of people still, they harp and they love the oil paints, but I've seen more people try the water-based and they're liking it. And if you're like me, I tend to put my paintbrush in my mouth to sharpen the edge of my brush, so oil paints wouldn't be a good idea.
What sort of methodologies are you using to make sure that you maintain the level of detail that the castings are giving?
Honestly, it comes down to the miniature itself. You look at the sculpt and you give it its own personality. You decide how you want that to look. There's so many different techniques you can use to do that. The more you've painted, the more you start to dabble in the higher the higher techniques. So most people, they'll start with color blocking, they'll get the color on. When we say something's tabletop ready, it means it has 3 colors on it and it's good to go. But then you start to really take pride in your miniatures and you start to pick out those details, and then you get into techniques such as object source lighting, which is painting light onto a miniature, as well as non-metallic metal, which is using flat colors to reproduce metallic shading. And the artists in the world that have really, really taken that and run with it, they're second to none for quality, and it's incredible to see.
What about inventing detail? Do you consider yourself an artist in that regard, sort of like, maybe shield detail or landscaping?
So that's another thing that people like to do. We refer to it as freehanding. You can have a shield as a good example. Often people will create an emblem for an army if they're playing something like Warhammer, and you can freehand those designs, and that takes so much patience and so much skill, and when it's pulled off, it's absolutely incredible. But there is another method for those out there that are less artistically inclined, and they're water transfers. So sort of like the temporary tattoos we used to have as kids and probably still do now. It was the same thing applies. You paint your miniature and you put that on there, and you can pass it off for a painted emblem.
What about brush? When I was doing mine, a horsehair was the thing. But what's it like now?
So horsehair is still used. I've seen camel hair as well. My personal favorite is the Kolinsky. It's like a small rodent out of the Russian area. It's a beautiful quality brush, but we have moved on to synthetic as well. So it's obviously more eco-friendly. People love it. Unfortunately, I've not found a synthetic yet that really matches the quality of something like a Kolinsky. And Kolinsky Masterclass is kind of the top brand for mid-level painters like myself.
And what's your favorite brush?
It's the Kolinsky Masterclass by Army Painter. That thing is my baby, and I've got about 8 of them at any given time in case one breaks. I'll always have one on me.
10-0?
No, it's a 00.
Art, like anything else, is a bit of a personal choice. But in an environment like today at the con, you're competing against other people. So what have you noticed about other people's styles?
The one thing I will say is I love seeing people's work. The level of quality, it doesn't matter. People put time into it, they sat down, they put a brush to paint, and we all share that common experience, and to me that's worth so much.
Grant Kingsley and his wife Sandra are international miniature competitors, and they partnered with local mural artist Daniel Mahood to judge this year's entries for the YCon Miniature Contest.
Hi, I'm Grant Kinsley, one of the judges of the Miniatures Contest at YCon 2022. I'm here with my wife Sandra Kinsley and another talent artist, Danielle Mahood. And we're the 3 judges who just finished judging the contest at YCon.
So Grant, what are you looking for when it comes to the miniatures? Because there's such a wide variety of different categories and different models as I'm looking here at the table. So what consistent elements are you looking for?
Well, in general, all of the categories, as varied as they are, we're looking for how well the model is put together. Have people actually glued together pieces well? Have they left gaps? Then we're looking for the quality of the paint job, the inspiration of the paint job. In other words, not just the technical details, but do the colors go together well? Do the effects they want to produce, like lighting effects and stuff, or metallic effects, come off looking good to the eye? Is the piece easy to read, i.e. when I look at a face and then my eye flows around the miniature, does it flow easily, or do I have difficulty looking at the miniature trying to figure where my eyes should go? Then we're looking at the difficulty of the miniature painted. It's going to play a part. If it's a very simple miniature, the score is not going to be as high as a very difficult miniature with pieces underneath that need to be painted well. And finally, we're also looking for how the groundwork looks on the miniature. You can have the best painted miniature in the world, but if you don't have a scene to set it off, that's a problem.
So some of the miniatures are standalone, meaning that they're not in a diorama or any kind of a setting. Are you grading those differently than others?
Yeah, we tend to, the painting will get graded higher on those and the groundwork to a lesser level. Whereas if we're doing something called ambient or a diorama, we're going to look much more at the effects of the groundwork to see if the groundwork ties the whole scene together.
So I've noticed that some of the miniatures have been heavily modified, where certain pieces might have been moved or it lobbed off at the base, or some base pieces have been added. So when it comes to something like that that's been quote unquote constructed, are you looking at it differently than some of the other ones?
More what we're looking at in that kind of a scenario is, has the piece been put in place in a way that flows with the model? If I can see big gaps or areas where the piece doesn't really fit on another piece, that's going to work against it. However, people who have done that additional work, we're also going to take that into consideration that they've done some additional work in the inspiration end of things.
At the end of the day, when you're looking at the talent that's here on the table compared to, your own stuff, are you looking for shades of you in the material, or are you really coming at it with a new eye?
No, I don't really try to compare to myself. Sandra and I have chosen to judge the contest rather than compete because we have all that experience and stuff, and we'd much rather come in and play the hand of a bit of a mentor. When we judge, we actually leave hints for people, but they don't need to paint in my style. They just need to paint well. And if we can guide them on how to properly attain a certain effect, you might do it in a different way than me, but what we want to see is, are you coming out in the end with the effect looking realistic?
Miniature composition has changed wildly over the years. When I was painting miniatures in the 80s, they were pewter. You didn't have much else to work with other than that. So it was a lot of extra work to try to modify the miniatures to suit a diorama setting. But nowadays it's resin and plastics. Do you see them as easier to paint maybe, or easier to manipulate into whatever your creativity might take you?
Depends on the miniature. In resin, you certainly have a wide open ball game. It's easy to cut, it's easy to bend, it's easy to put back together. And learning some sculpting skills with stuff like green stuff or milliput is certainly going to go a long way to help you. Pewter had its own problems, but it also was in some ways easier to work with. Some of the new Games Workshop pieces are designed in the computer and cut up in the computer to be put together like a car model. They can be very, very difficult to put together because pieces may not actually make sense on their own. So cutting the pieces, the arm might be actually in 3 different pieces. So if you just want the arm, it may be difficult to place.
So Danielle, from an artistic standpoint, when you look at some of the murals that you've done in town, what are you looking for in the miniatures?
The miniatures was a completely new thing for me, so I was really just looking at them as a whole and how they would catch my eye and looking at all the details and the use of color.
What are some of the similarities between the miniature painting and some of the work that you're doing yourself?
I like to work in a lot of color, and I like to work with a lot of realism, so I can see how that plays to the miniatures as well. They're trying to make these pieces look realistic, and the use of the different types of paints and stuff is, I can see how it lends to the miniatures as well as my larger pieces.
So Sandra, when it comes to the miniatures, what's your favorite pieces to paint? Is it more of the fantasy and sci-fi pieces, or is it more gameplay pieces?
For me, it's the fantasy and sci-fi pieces. I prefer a slightly larger size. I'll do a 75 millimeter figure or a bust, preferably over the 35 millimeters, which is the game standard.
And from your perspective, what were you looking for in the miniatures today?
Something that gave you a feeling of wow. Something where you walked up to it and you could see a definite place where your eye goes to, and quality of painting.
So if somebody was looking to get into miniature painting, right from the ground up, what would be some of your tidbits and advice?
If you don't have somebody that you can talk to about miniature painting, go online and look up some of the world, the people that are really doing well in the world, like Ben Comets, Sergio Rusto. They all have online content which can show you how to paint. There's a lot of online content that can get you a lot of skill improvement.
And Grant, as a last word, what would be some of your advice to the Yarmouth painters to improve content for next year?
Well, I think There's nothing to be said, but nothing gets you better than practice. So get out there and do it. Don't be shy to make piece that maybe you're not quite proud of, because that will improve you in your next piece. My first miniatures were god awful. Now I compete at an international level. You know, that's the way you get better. Look up that online content. Consider subscribing to your favorite painters on Patreon. Guys like Ben Comets and Sergio Rubio will teach you a lot about painting. Look at some of your favorite artwork by guys like Kirill Kanaev or Kaha. You can get a lot of inspiration on how to do just by looking at the artwork.
Now that YCon 2022 is over, we have one last check-in with Malcolm Seaboyer. He's the president of the YCon committee. Hey, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
So I got to ask you, YCon 2022, did it meet or exceed your expectations?
Far exceeded. It was awesome. I can't thank everyone involved enough to bring the community together, to celebrate things from gaming to cosplay and different fandoms like comic books, and all that was just jam-packed into a great 3-day weekend, and I am so happy with how it turned out. Thanks to all the attendees, too, and everyone who showed up.
An event like this does not happen without sponsors, and it certainly doesn't happen without volunteers. So
Exactly.
Here's your opportunity to give a shout-out to both.
I'd love to. As you mentioned, there's a lot of people at play that help make this happen. I'd like to thank the province of Nova Scotia, the town of Yarmouth, the municipality of the district of Yarmouth, the municipality of Argyll, Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism, the Marketing and Promotions Levy Advisory Committee, Ignite Labs Yarmouth, Credit Union Coastal Financial in Yarmouth, the Tourism Industry Association of Nova Scotia, and the Nova Scotia Tourism Human Resource Council, Jungle Gyms Yarmouth, the Lake Lawn B&B and Motel, Nova Star Motel on the Lake, Dairy Queen Yarmouth, Yarmouth Walking Tours, Gatorbyte Computers and Entertainment, and our host venue, the Rod Grand Hotel. Volunteers, again, like you said, cannot thank them enough. They really pulled together an amazing event, and we had about over 20 volunteers throughout the weekend, and our 8 members of the executive committee and board of directors. I'll give a quick shout out to them directly. That's Kellyanne Perry, Kayla Fells, Mario Gauguin, Natasha York Phillip, Judy Rosie, Matt Hiltz, and Braxton Phillip. And we could not have done the event without all of them and their support and their time. And I can't thank them enough.
Like on the floor, I mean, when we were looking at the cosplay, there was like families of people that showed up. And just like in your executive, I mean, you've got families that show up to volunteer. I mean, this is got to be really great for you in the event.
It was so great. It was so great to see everybody put so much, creativity and effort and everything into their cosplay costumes. I was super impressed with everyone. Just brings the community together. So much color and energy and positivity, and I loved it.
I imagine after an event like this, Malcolm, you kind of take a few days after, step back, and kind of have a retrospect and how everything went. What takeaways did you have, and what kind of feedback were you getting from participants and other attendees?
We had a lot of positive feedback. Everybody was really happy. Loved to get out and play games again, see their friends, make new friends, win some prizes. We had some tournaments that had some pretty cool prizes involved. So a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people, saying, "Oh, we're definitely coming back again next year." And I've heard a lot of people that, are gonna really keep it on their calendar and make a point of making sure they get to next year if they missed out this year. We're really excited, and definitely are going to take a few days to compress and learn of even ways that we can improve. We always think that you always improve on something. There's a lot of things to work on, and hopefully even come back in 2023 with the same positivity, and that's the plan, and even bigger and better next year. So yeah, can't wait for next year.
Did you have people stop in through the YCon 2022, maybe just saw the signage, heard about it, saw it on social media, thought, what is this all about? I'll stop in, check it out.
Yeah, we had a few people like that. A lot of people who, just walking by and they saw our sign out on the street and popped in and wanted to check it out more once we explained it. And then that'll help out with such a positive weekend. We love the word of mouth marketing that this town. I think Yarmouth is a big word of mouth town to get the word out of events, and we just can't wait to welcome everybody back and even more people in 2023. We definitely exceeded our first year numbers and exceeded expectations, and welcomed over 400 people into the convention, which was awesome to see.
So for the next year, at what point is your AGM, and at what point would you be looking for people to maybe kick in for next year's event?
Yeah, that's a great question. We'd love to bring some more people on board if you're interested in volunteering and helping plan the event. Our AGM is typically in early September, so keep an eye on yarmouthcon.com or our social media, Facebook and Instagram pages for that. And we'd love to, if you're interested in getting involved with YCon, keep an eye out for us at our AGM.
Malcolm, I want to ask about the committee which you are president of. And I know, as you mentioned, it takes a lot of people to put this thing together. But sort of in a general sense, can you talk about that, the strength and commitment of the committee and the individuals?
Absolutely. Taking on, the president role is just, it's about teamwork. There's no I in team. It's more of I look at it as, it's a team event. Of course, there's got to be a president in organizations, but it's a shared effort, and I can't thank our planning committee and executive members so much again. Everybody has different strengths, whether it's design work, cosplay, expertise, working with youth and community and video gaming. We have a volunteer coordinator. We have our treasurer who helps manage our budget, gaming coordinator Matt. He's got a wealth of knowledge of board games and video games, and the sci-fi connections, and everyone is, it's like a bit of a family in a way. Everybody brings a different piece of experience to the convention. Everybody's so positive. I love that, and welcoming, and I just can't say enough about it.
So Malcolm, final thoughts?
Oh, wow. Final thoughts. It's so much fun. Definitely a busy weekend. But we brought the event back after a couple of years of, pandemics and lockdowns and stress, and just put a smile on a lot of people's faces. And I'm so happy to see that. I just wanted to thank again all the vendors, all the volunteers, all the guests, all of our planning committee members, everybody involved for bringing the event together. Just such a positive event that we're going to build on and look forward to again in 2023.
Malcolm, thanks so much, and thanks to you and your committee and all the volunteers, and we look forward to YCon 2023, which I'm sure your folks are working on already.
You got it. We're already well underway, I think, in a way.
I'm Gary Nickerson.
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
And this has been Outside My Window.